And I guess can you just touch on right now, what's the outlook of the marathon looking like?
Yeah, so I wish I could have good news, but the outlook is, after lots of discussion with our race committee and our um, Run Wild Missoula Board of Directors, we've made the choice to cancel the marathon for this year.
All right. And can you touch on the process just leading up to that decision? Obviously, the outlook wasn't good when more sports leagues and whatnot and bigger events started getting canceled. But when did that come into mind when you needed to start thinking about that decision? And then just touch on that process until leading up to now.
Yeah, sure. So we had actually back in late March, March 28th, we had told our participants, we'd announced to them that we would make the announcement on May 7th. Because even then, we could see with how drastic everything was and how quickly evolving the situation was that we need to be prepared. And then by early April, we'd already told our participants the options that we would be considering if we had to cancel. And so that gave us about 6 weeks now to go through and complete our due diligence and do the evaluation, have the discussions with our medical director, Rob Amrine of Missoula Bone and Joint, to talk to the folks at City County Health and get their input and feedback, to see what the other races around the country and around Montana and the region were doing in June and July. Talk to our committee members, talk to our board of directors, visit with some of our volunteer groups, and collect all that data to really make a good decision. And, quite frankly, we probably could have announced this a little bit earlier, but we'd already said it would be May 7th. And we were hopeful that that would give us enough time that if it was possible, that it still gave us the time to hold the race. We were afraid if we made the announcement too early in April and something changed, then, we didn't have a choice. So this gave us the best option, but really in talking with more recently with Dr. Amrine and with City County Health, it just doesn't look like it's feasible to do it for a wide variety of reasons.
And obviously, this is a huge community deal, not just for runners, but everyone involved in the community seems to have some part, whether it's big or small, in the Missoula Marathon. Can you touch on just how big of a disappointment this is this year, but just your hopes for when it does come back, how much community involvement and excitement there will be around it?
Yeah, that's always been a big part of the race, and a big part, the community involvement and the community engagements. A very big part, a huge part of why we've gotten a lot of the awards and recognition that we've gotten over the last several years. The people of Missoula take great pride in being part of the race, in helping to support the race, in encouraging people to come to Missoula and show off our city. And it's a huge disappointment to us because we don't get to share that with everybody. We don't get to share it with our participants that come in here, and we don't get to share it with the community that lives here and that has become such an integral part of the event. It's hugely disappointing for us for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is we lose that community engagement for this year. Now, down the road, for next year, I had a meeting with our race committee earlier today, and we talked about probably by sometime in July, we'll be ready to start planning for next year to how we can bring it back, make it a great event, get people excited about it, get people re-engaged, and just make it a spectacular event in 2021.
All right. And obviously, you can't touch on financial loss as far as like businesses and things like that go. But what does that look like financially as far as like how much you had planned and whatnot, vendors wise, not being able to come? How does that affect you guys?
Yeah, and without divulging specific numbers, it's a high six-figure event throughout the year. Some of those monies have been spent because there's some things that we have to purchase early with long lead times. And it's one of the challenges that a lot of race events have had of, some of those expenses already done. But what it does mean, though, is luckily our local vendors have been great. A lot of those costs, for us, it's good because we don't have to spend it. But for them, we feel bad because that's not money that's going into their pocket. We know that this event generates somewhere in excess of $2 million, we believe, to the of direct economic impact. And a lot of that isn't, none of that's going to be here this year because we don't have the people coming. There's some expenses that we're not going to have this year because we're not going to have to rent portable toilets. We're not going to have to utilize the local law enforcement agencies and hire those folks to help us with the course, traffic control, road setup. There's just a lot of things that we're not going to have to do, and that's money that's not going to our local economy that we always plan for to happen. So yeah, there's no winners in this scenario. Our runners don't get to take part. We don't get to put on a great event, and our community doesn't get to share in that. And we have a variety of people from restaurants to hotels to breweries to specialty stores, small businesses throughout the community that aren't going to see those dollars come into the community this year.
All right. And my next question was similar to that, but as far as the runners go, what does that look like? Do you have an option to push your, if you register, to push to the next year or a refund?
Yeah, so we've got a whole suite of options, and we think it's one of the better packages that we've seen out there for races that have canceled. And like I said, we had told our runners in early April what those were likely going to look like, and we've seen others have followed what that's going to be. So what it includes is a 50% refund on your entry fee. We'd love to do more, but like I said, there's already some fixed costs that we've absorbed there. But we feel comfortable giving 50% refund as an option. They have an option of deferring their race to next year. So they just take that option. They're moved right over to 2021. We'll have a virtual event where regardless of where you live, you can run a 5K, a half marathon, a marathon, and we'll ship you your shirt and your medal. So that would be the third option. Our fourth option would be we'll give people the ability to donate to Run Wild Missoula. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and that will help our bottom line a little bit. But what we're also going to do is all of those donations that we get from that end, we'll split those between Run Wild Missoula, youth homes, opportunity resources, and the Missoula Food Bank, and still find some way to give back to our local organizations in Missoula that are doing great things. Because that's one part of this that we also miss out. Proceeds from this race, ultimately that helps Run Wild Missoula with our community giving that we do. And all of those organizations are people that we typically try to work with that are doing great stuff here in Missoula. And so it just allows us to still make some of that back to those local organizations.
Yeah, that's great. And then was there any talk about moving it to a later date? Or was that it was kind of just June, end of June, and that was it? Because I know that it's been moved, in the past for avoiding fire season and whatnot. So was there any talk of ever pushing it back?
There was talk. It just wasn't very viable. So in the Missoula area, in Montana and within the region, and also nationally, we were kind of in a weird spot in the race season. We're at the end of spring, very, very early summer. A lot of the race events are in the earlier spring. So all of those have already been canceled. We already had a very busy fall schedule. So a lot of those spring races that canceled, they moved to the summer. And that includes things like the Riverbank Run, like Runner's Edge, 11 Miles to Paradise, have moved to this fall. We have, I believe, 5 races of our own in the fall. We've got Grizzly football games, hoping those still go on, but we've got Grizzly football games over, I think, 5 or 6 weekends in the fall. A lot of the big spring marathons from around the country have all moved to the fall. So when we put that all together, there was just no room for us to fit without either sacrificing our numbers or else cannibalizing from other events to where they saw less numbers because now they were going to come and do the Missoula Marathon. So again, right back to that thing, there's no winners out of the whole situation. It's going. We are really, really hopeful that we have a fall racing season. It's going to be super busy, but man, we'd love to see it and have a very, very busy fall because like everybody else, we have to figure out a way to get our industry back on track. Because, right now we're sitting with, many of us are sitting with very, very limited revenue because, we just don't have the races. We've got a few virtual races we're doing, but, it's largely gone. So we got to figure a way to get back in the fall.
And you talked about the virtual idea of doing the marathon. How has you guys have done a ton of other virtual things that have been very creative, like the Mountain Jumbo Run and whatnot. How have you guys seen that succeed? And then I guess, what does the time frame look like? Can you kind of run that virtual marathon or your real marathon whenever you want to? And then is there like a time frame on that?
Yeah, so it will allow people to get started on that right this coming weekend. So if they select that option, they can go ahead and do it. And they have up through race weekend to finish that. And the reason we did that is we also, we get a lot of people from the South. And it's already getting pretty tough to be running in the South. So we figured, all right, let's let them get out and get it in early. And maybe that's a good time for them. So it's got a little bit longer than we normally do. We normally wouldn't have that out there, but so it gives them plenty of time to do it. And the virtual races we've done, the virtual events we've done, they've been good. They've been great. I mean, it's a great way to still have our engagement of our participants, but we know it's not for everybody because a lot of people are into this sport and these events for part of the social atmosphere, building relationships, being part of that, and that's all gone. So there's some people that aren't interested. So we're expecting at best, we're hoping we get maybe 25% of our field take part in that. And if we get that number, we'd be thrilled. And if we get more, all the better. We're prepared to deal with it, that whatever that number is. Again, it's a great way to do it. We'll keep our marathon training classes alive. We'll continue to support those virtually and digitally like we have been for the last 6 weeks. So if people want, we will still support our runners out there and let them go out. And so it doesn't really matter, if you live in New York, if you live in New Orleans, if you live in Chicago, wherever, and you want to take part, we'll still give you that opportunity and we'll send you your medal and your finisher shirt.
All right. Is there anything else that I didn't touch on that you'd like to add just about the cancellation or just the process of how this has gone?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, that we like to talk about is, we've done a really good job in Montana of managing the virus. We can all see what's out there with all the other states and the how many people have gotten sick, what that mortality rate's been. And we have not had that here, and that's been spectacular. But as the flip side of that is we've talked to Dr. Amrine and to City County Health, is all those people from out of state that we don't know what their situations have been as far as how they, as far as their quarantine status, what kind of environment they've been around. And we bring those people to Missoula, and we have through whatever means of transmission that takes place, there's a real concern that we'll suddenly see this big spike in Montana. And not just in Missoula, but, we've got, several thousand people from elsewhere in Montana, not just Missoula, but from everywhere else, right? So then people go home to Bozeman or Kalispell or Butte or Iverness or, Fort Peck, wherever they live, and they bring potentially the virus home with there, and it kicks off a whole cascade of new stuff. And nobody wants to see that happen. And so just nobody was comfortable that it was the right choice to do that. Whether it's in the running industry or the concert industry or even some of the other event industries, nobody's figured out what that time looks like to get thousands of people back together. And so, as we just looked at it, we just weren't comfortable and felt, we just had to make the right choice and pull that trigger for the safety of our participants, for the safety of the community. Like I say, I mean, all I can keep coming back to out of this whole scenario is there's no winners out of this, and it's just so unfortunate. I wish the story were different, but those are the cards we've been dealt, and so we're just going to progress as best as we can with that, and hope we come out strong and healthy on the other side as an organization.